Hello, everyone. Welcome to Broadway.com's Live at 5. It's Tuesday, May 15th. I'm Beth Stevens.
And I'm Paul Wontorek.
And we are here with social media maven, Caitlin Gallup.
Hi, everyone.
And Mr. Walter Bobbie is here.
Bobbie is here. Of St. Joan.
Yes.
Actor turned director turned actor, still a director. He just does it all. And he's here. And we're not wearing the same shirt in different shades of blue, but we kind of are. But we checked. It's not the same shirt.
But before we get to Mr. Bobbie, we are going to do our top 5.
Yep. All right, so it's award season. Did you know that? You probably knew that if you watch Live at 5 every day. So we got the Helen Hayes Award winners today.
Right, so Helen Hayes is the fancy Washington, D.C.
Right. Many major cities have their own awards. It's not just
We don't cover them all like we do the Helen Hayes, though.
Well,
for some reason, the Helen Hayes, I mean, it's very Broadway adjacent. And especially of note this year is that Mean Girls won. And of course, Mean Girls was nominated for a bunch of Tonys and Broadway.com Audience Choice Awards.
Yes.
And it won Outstanding Visiting Production. Of course, it played there last fall.
Just visiting, though.
Just visiting.
Not a resident.
And then Dennis Jones won a Helen Hayes Award for choreographing Crazy for You at Signature Theater. And Luis Salgado, who was in The Heights, won also for direction and choreography of In the Heights at Gala Hispanic Theater. And if you look at the site, we'll tell you all the winners.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. It's also award season. Did you know? Because Frozen is going on tour, and we're very excited about it.
I don't know what that has to do with awards, but thank you,
What
Caitlin.
she's saying is
Yes,
because we talked about this yesterday.
Yes.
Because all the shows announced their tours now because it helps get Tony votes.
That's correct.
That's what she means.
They
Beth.
call it the
Come on, you've been
call
doing
it
this a
the-
long time.
They call it the road. But
Appreciate
Don't
it,
be
Paul.
coy.
surprising absolutely no one, Frozen is going on tour. It will launch its North American touring production in the fall of 2019, so just you got to wait a little while. It's kicking off. This is always fun. It's kicking off in Schenectady.
Schenectady.
And I said it, Schenectady.
Well,
and I can spell it too.
They all go to
But-
Schenectady because the theater there is like really big and they can
and they
properly
fix everything
tech
and they
it
get it right, and then it will officially open in LA. They have
Hollywood.
it in Hollywood at the Pantages Theater in LA. Tour cities, casting, all of that will be announced later. So if you're auditioning, get ready. Because there's going to be an
Yes.
Elsa on the
Yeah.
road. That's exciting.
Learn the songs. Cast album just came out.
Exactly.
All right. Speaking of really great casting, we just got complete casting for Gypsy at the Muni.
So we're kind of obsessed with Beth Level.
Totally obsessed with
Here
Beth
at the
Level.
Broadway.com.
Yes.
We love Beth Level. And Beth, of course, is playing Rose in Gypsy, which is
That's genius.
epic, or AKA Mama Rose.
Right.
At the Muni. And we've been talking, I feel like we always talk about things happening at the Muni that would make us wish we were in St.
And
Louis.
we've never been there.
But we're not. I've never been there either.
Road
but,
trip, please.
But I want them to do remember I said they should do a New York concert of Muni highlights at the end of the summer?
Exactly. So we can
It's a good idea.
We can get a little piece of it here.
Anyway, so Beth Level is not the only good casting in this show. Adam Heller, who's fantastic, is playing Herbie. Julia Knittel, who I don't know, is Louise. Haley Pachoon is Dainty June. And Anne Harada is Electra. Ellen Harvey is Mazeppa. And Jennifer Cody
This is such great
is
casting.
playing the dual roles of Tessitura and Miss Cratchit. And I saw her play these roles in Cape Cod last summer. And she's worth the flight to St. Louis alone. Anyway, it's playing from July 27th to August 2nd.
Gotta go see that. All right. This is leading odds and ends today, but Neil Patrick Harris and a bunch of other fancy people are honoring the 20th anniversary of the Laramie Project.
Right. So the Laramie Project, I can't believe it's been 20 years. But this honors the life and legacy of Matthew Shepard, who was killed in Laramie, Wyoming. And it's kind of amazing. It's going to be on Monday, September 24th at the Gerald Lynch Theater at John Jay College. Listen to who's doing this. Neil Patrick Harris, Mary Louise Parker, Billy Porter, and then original members of the Laramie Project Company. The Tectonic Theater
right?
Project. And that's the founder and director of that is Moises Coffin, who will be directing again. And it's
And
pretty
they
amazing.
created it as a theater group by doing interviews together, right? Didn't they
Yeah,
go
it's
to Laramie and
documentary
interview?
style, telling Matthew Shepard's story.
Right.
Very moving and very important. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, me too.
All right, and last but certainly not least, we have new casting in Dear Evan Hansen tonight.
Yes, so congratulations, Alex Boniello. You have taken over the role of Connor Murphy. I don't know if you knew that, but you are. You got to the theater because you're in it now. Of course, Mike Feist left the production.
Tony nominee Mike Feist.
Tony nominee Mike Feist. I didn't want to put the pressure on Alex, but you
Wow.
had to add the Tony nominee
I just am adding
thing.
it right there.
Of course, Connor Murphy, a very mysterious, important role in the show. Anyway, of course, Alex was recently in Cruel Intentions. He made his Broadway debut as Moritz in The Deaf
Spring
West.
Awakening.
Michael Arden production of Spring Awakening. He was also in the films This American Life, TV show Jessica Jones, and Happy-ish. Anyway, congratulations. Have a first good show. Good first show.
Good first show.
Have a good first show.
Take your time, really, Paul.
Yeah. That's
Hey,
my cue.
That's your cue. It's been wonderful seeing
I'm
you.
out.
But we are going to be right back with Mr. Walter Bobbie. And Caitlin, tell us a little bit about Walter
All right,
Bobbie.
let's do it. If you don't already know, Walter Bobbie is both an actor and a director of plays and musicals whose recent directing credits include Bright Star, we love Bright Star here, and Venus in Fur, also love that. His acting career began in the original cast of Grease and spans Shaw's Getting Married at the Circle in the Square Theater to Nicely, and Guys and Dolls. He is formerly the artistic director of City Center's Encores, and Mr. Bobbie directed the international hit Chicago Right Next Door. And he is the board member of the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society and a recipient of Drama Desk, Outer Critics Circles, and Tony Awards. Send in your questions if you have them. Please do. And please welcome Beth and Walter.
Hello, Walter.
Hi, Beth. How are you?
I am honored to talk to you. I'm a huge fan of yours.
I'm happy to be here.
And you're back on stage at MTC doing
Yes.
St. Joan. Okay. Caitlin just told everyone who you are, but that doesn't even doesn't even cut the surface of it. So tell us about returning to the stage. It's been 20-something years since you were rocking the boat.
Yeah, well, in 1992,
92.
we did the revival of Guys and Dolls. Jerry Zaks directed Nathan and Faith Prince, and I had the privilege of playing Nicely Johnson and
Indelible
singing
performance.
Yes. Shortly, and during that time, I really some wonderful directing opportunities came to me. And actually, Jerry, in the middle of that great success, gave me a leave of absence to do a directing gig that came my way. And so I knew that I wasn't sort of an out-of-work actor who wanted to direct. I really wanted to do it.
You took a leave of absence for a few weeks? You
I
directed?
I was offered an opportunity to do a grand night for singing, which was a Rodgers and Hammerstein review at Rainbow and Stars. And
you left this gigantic hit.
well, Jerry gave me a 3-week leave of absence because Jerry, I've known Jerry since Grease. We
Right,
were
he
both
was a
actors.
Mickey, you were
yeah.
Roger.
So we've known each other since the early 70s. And I think he knew how important this was to me. And he
As
gave
an
me
actor turned director.
as an
himself.
actor turned director, and these opportunities, it's hard to re-identify yourself. The business gets used to who you are.
Right.
And and Jerry very generously gave me a leave of absence. For some reason, every major critic came to that review and said, "Oh, he's a director." And suddenly I was the artistic director of Encores, and Jerry Zaks starred in my first production, Fiorello. And so it happened when my directing career happened, although it was longed for a while. It happened in New York with the very best people, and it was a very privileged evolution, I think, for me.
So what made you want to get back on stage as an actor?
I've been thinking in recent years, gee, I'd like to try it again to see what it's like, and I let casting directors know that. I'm not dying to get back, but if something came up, and out of the blue, Dan Sullivan and Lynn Meadow called me, which is a very good combination, a very good call, with Shaw's St. Joan. So it wasn't, some other things have come along the way, but I wasn't going to move my schedule to do them.
So this was good timing?
It was perfect timing, a sublime. I read the cast list.
Oh, yeah.
Headed by Condola Rashad.
A-team, yeah.
And I've directed some of the actors in the show. I've worked with both the designers, Jane Greenwood and Scott Pask.
Yeah.
So, and I've had great success the last time I actually was on stage was in David Ives' Polish Joke at Manhattan Theater Club.
Wow. And then you directed Venus in Fur.
Oh, I've directed a lot with David Ives.
Right.
But that was one of John Rando called, and they had lost somebody, and I was free, and I came down and had a ball. But I haven't done a play since then.
So tell me about stepping on stage again in those red robes you get to wear, the beautiful costume.
I wanted to see if I could do it again, and I thought if Dan Sullivan thinks I can, I should say yes to this opportunity. It seemed to me great, and I love Shaw, and it was an opportunity to do a really muscular play filled with ideas and wit, with an extraordinary cast everywhere you look on that stage. And most of my stuff is with Patrick Page, Bob Stanton, and my dear new friend Jack Davenport.
Who's making his debut.
He's making his
Of course, he's
debut.
been on stage a lot in the UK.
Yes. So it seemed a gift.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And you're back. It feels good to have you doing
And
a different kind of role.
Yes, it does. I think I wouldn't have done it if it was a musical for some reason, but this seemed like a great opportunity to see if I can memorize again.
Right, that's a big task. And
It
you know
is a
that
big task
the
with
text
Shaw.
is good if it's Shaw,
Yeah.
so you have no problem with that. Let's talk about the beginning of your interest in theater. So I read that you didn't see a lot of theater growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
What sparked your interest?
You know, I grew up in Scranton, and then we moved to New Jersey, and I remember that my dad and mom got me a hi-fi stereo I was in the 8th grade for Christmas, and along with it 3 albums. One of them was Oklahoma, and I had no idea why I
see.
played it over and over. It was a soundtrack, it wasn't the original cast album. And I played it over and over and over, and I just thought, what is this? And I started to get more cast albums, and I found myself really, you know, you put 3 different toys on the floor and you watch which one the child picks up. And I picked them up. And then when I was in college, I came to New York to see the World's Fair. And while I was in town, I saw 2 Broadway shows in one day. I saw How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and I practically had to hold myself in the chair. I was so excited. And then I saw The Glass Menagerie with Maureen Stapleton.
Well, that's a range right there.
And I just went, this is it. You know, I was a business and then English philosophy major in college. And then but that day I just went, that's what I want to do. And I'm going to go to New York naively and do that. And then I went to graduate school in theater at Catholic University of America. And I came to New York and I just started auditioning.
So having been at Catholic University of America and being in St. Joan, tell me how that matches up, if anything.
Well, I know how to wear the gown, I'll tell you that. And also I went to a Jesuit school, so putting on a cassock, a gown, anything. In fact, the last time I did Shaw, I did a not particularly good Shaw play called Getting Married at Circle in the Square back in 1980, I believe. And I was also a cleric in that. So I'm either, you know, in a plaid suit singing and dancing, or a cleric. That's my range.
That's true. Those are the 2 headshots you might offer up.
Or a greaser. It's an odd career.
Or a greaser.
from the mooning champ of Rydell High to the bishop of Beauvais in medieval France is quite a range.
I mean, really. That's amazing. Now, of course, everyone who talks to you has to talk about Chicago.
Yes.
It's a monster hit. It's been out over 20 years now.
Yes.
We're right next door to Chicago. We watch them line up for it every day. Why do you think it's such a big hit? Because the original production was not.
I remember I was reading, I was the artistic director at the time, and I was
Of
reading
Encores.
of Encores, yes. And I was reading about what I wanted to do in the next season, and watching the OJ trial at the same time and going, oh my God, this feels like, you know,
Getting
it was
Away with
written.
Murder, it feels
Yes,
like, perhaps.
It felt newly minted. And I think what Fosse and Kander and Ebb originally wrote as an indictment and of the America, basically, had turned into a documentary. And
Wow.
so I felt that it felt fresh to me, and it felt current. And I think that the enduring, interesting part of the show is that it is not only a seductive toe tapper with a glorious score, but it's about something.
Yeah.
And it's about, you know, the abuse of celebrity in America. It's about getting away with murder, basically, one of our favorite topics, and a topic that internationally has it's worked everywhere in the
It
world.
resonates everywhere.
Yes, because people get
Plus,
away
it's
with
very
murder.
sexy.
Yeah, and it's very sexy, yeah.
Because Fosse and this William Ivy Long, barely their costume.
Yes, we got rid of all that stuff because William Ivy Long, I said, I want you to dress everybody, let's celebrate dancers, because Fosse loved
Sure.
dancers. He was the first one to make dancers sing and carry all the lines. That, you know, back in the 60s, there was a singing chorus, there was a dancing
yeah,
chorus.
yeah.
In a Fosse show, you had to be able to do everything.
Triple threats.
And I said, let's just dress them as dancers and put them in Fosse's 2 favorite colors, which are black and flesh. And he ran with that and did a superb job.
And they never leave the stage.
They never leave the
They're
stage. They
stuck.
never
They're
dress up
trapped.
like lawyers or journalists
Which, if
or
you look
judges.
at footage of the original production, they're in
They're
prison
all
garb
yes.
and that
we
sort
just
of
we
thing.
just we took everything away. Ann and I just and all of us, John Lee Beatty as well. We just took everything away, and what was left was plenty. You
Yeah,
know, it was a gem.
absolutely. And you've had Bebe Neuwirth in 3 different roles in the
I've
show.
had Bebe Neuwirth
I
in 3
really
different
think she
roles,
could
and now we have
play-
Ruthie Henschel in 3 different
Oh, yeah,
roles
that's
she's
right, in
playing
Chicago-
Mama
in
and Morton.
London.
Yes.
I really think that these ladies could do Billy Flynn. Just consider it. Think about it.
You know, there was a moment where we thought of putting a rather famous celebrity in the role of Billy Flynn, and Fred Ebb wrote a lyric called "We Want Billy" for a chorus of men singing to a female Billy. That's hilarious. I have it in my files.
Well, we're going to take some questions from you guys.
Yes, we are.
Because I know you have a lot of them. So let's start.
All right. Abby wants to know, how has directing changed your perspective as an actor?
You know, I don't. The interesting thing is, once I say that I'm going to act, I forget about directing. Once I say Dan Sullivan's in charge,
You don't have a director's mind.
No, I let it go. I think it's
Second-guessing
important
it,
to let
yeah.
it go. And also, there's so much. Your job as a director is very wide. You have to deal with the themes, the setting, the costumes, the lighting, and it's a very big job. But your job as an actor is narrow but deep.
Mm-hmm.
And your job is to dive and to trust everything else is going on. I remember when I was doing Polish Joke, David Ives and John Rando are friends of mine, the writer and the director. I wouldn't even go to lunch with them. I said, you have to go and talk about me and talk about what I'm doing. I let it go. And I learned that actually from Jerry. Jerry was a 4-time Tony Award winning director. And when he did Fiorello for me, he dropped all of that. And I remember after the first day of the rehearsal, he said, "You're going to be okay." It's so wonderful.
Well,
to
both
see-
of you
yeah.
had that facility to be a director and then be an actor and then go back to directing, which
Yes.
is not something everyone can do.
No, I'm very privileged in that regard, and that people have in the business have allowed that at a very, very high level, I have to say.
Did Jerry give you any advice when you started to direct? Because he had directed before you did.
No, I think I've had the good fortune to work with very good directors
As an actor.
As an actor, so I was always in class, with Jerry Gutierrez or Jerry Zaks or Dan Sullivan. I mean, the list is quite extraordinary.
So you were taking notes.
I was watching. I mean, one of my first jobs in the city was the understudy of The Grass Harp with Barbara Cook, and there was Ellis Rabb.
Wow.
And I was understudying, so all I could do is watch this master of American directing and acting. So I've always been in class without having to pay for it.
Very lucky. Can we talk about something that might be a sore spot?
What?
Your Broadway debut.
Oh, it's not a sore spot at all.
Your
It's
Broadway
the,
debut closed on opening night.
it is the only theater poster I have.
Oh, that's amazing.
I have. I don't. I.
So it's
I,
called Fred Merriwell. Did I say that
It was
correctly?
called Frank Merriwell.
Frank Merriwell. Okay.
It opened and closed in one night, and it's the only theater poster I did a ton of, not terrible, no, but unsuccessful shows back in the 70s. And I remember walking into my apartment one night and seeing it looked like Joe Allen's wall.
That's
and
not a
I
good
just
thing.
took them all off the wall and I threw them in the garbage. And I thought, I don't want to celebrate. I kept getting jobs.
Right, which is good.
But my first Broadway show was called Frank Merriwell, and it lasted one night. And I was not, in fact, my first off-Broadway show was called Drat, me and Bonnie Franklin,
Wow.
the late dear Bonnie Franklin, in a show produced by Barr and Woodward, who were at the same time, doing Sweeney Todd and great
of
stuff.
course.
Anyway, and it closed in one night. In fact, the producers came to me Wednesday before we opened, and they said, "We're going to close the show on opening, and it's not your fault."
Oh, you knew ahead of time.
And they offered me another job that night, so I
that's the thing, it can
closed
always lead to
Drat, and I became the understudy for the Grass Harp a day later. So
This doesn't happen that often anymore.
it doesn't happen that often anymore. No.
But, I'm sorry. Go on. We have
Okay.
more questions. I just
We
have
have great questions. Elise wants to know, what is the most challenging part about being in St. Joan?
The most challenging part, I find it all very invigorating. The challenge for me was memorizing the script so that I could get to Shaw's ideas. There's no way to act. It's, Shakespeare or any kind of muscular language that you can't really get to what the play is about, what the ideas are, until you have ownership of the words. You can do a contemporary play and improvise your way through, but when you get lost, if you have a sentence that goes on and on endlessly with subordinate clauses and God knows what, and you go, I know there's a verb coming up here somewhere, but unless you have ownership of that, you can't begin to deal with the very vigorous debate that happens between most especially Jack Davenport and myself, and the ideas that Shaw is bringing into incredible collision in this play. So I think the big hurdle for me, not having memorized a dense text in a while, was getting past that so that I could actually get to my acting and as I like to say, listen better, or listen faster, as opposed to thinking of what I have to say next.
All right, David wants to know if you have a dream role to perform and a dream script to direct.
Excellent questions.
My dream role, and I'm sorry I never went somewhere. I should have just gone to, anywhere at some point and just gotten Music Man out of my system.
Oh.
Because that was one of those albums, when I got it, I destroyed it, putting the needle back on treble, just trying to memorize that, and did. I don't know what, I think the dream project for me is has always been what I need to learn next. I've had the opportunity to, it's just like doing this is so unusual. I couldn't have imagined something like Bright Star coming into my life. And the idea of spending several years with Steve Martin and Edie Brickell, even though the show wasn't a commercial success, creatively and as a piece of development, it was so deeply satisfying. So that's what I'm looking for as the next. There's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of stuff that comes my way that doesn't really interest me. And frankly, at my age, I try to choose wisely because, especially with new musicals, it's
You have to
3 or
live with
4
it.
years.
Yeah.
You have to you have to say you mean it,
Yeah.
and for quite some time.
Is there an actor you'd like to direct
Oh, there are so
that
many.
you haven't, perhaps?
Oh, there are so many actors that I love and admire, and actors I've worked with before that I'd love to work with again. I want to work with the entire cast of St. Joan. I want to direct
Oh, yeah.
all of them. They're all so good. I'm so happy that I have directed, John Glover
Oh,
in
yeah.
Bet and
Love
Boo,
him.
and Adam Chandler, who was splendid. We did a concert of Zorba at Encores a couple years ago. He's a superb actor and a good fellow. So it's hard to name names because I'm surrounded by such great talent all the time. So to say who's my favorite, who's the best.
Yeah, that's
You
tough.
know.
Everyone's great.
In fact, what happened to me? I always wanted to direct. And people said, oh, you should direct. And then when Encores came to me and offered me the first show, I called all those people because I had been, my good fortune was when they offered me a Fiorello, I had been working in the Broadway theater for 25 years. So I opened the phone book and I called Phil Bosco and
Right, the
Faith
creme de
Prince
la
and
creme.
Donna McKechnie.
Yeah.
I called everybody and I said, would you show up for me? And they did. So I was blessed with having a phone book that was 25 years old on Broadway and a career, so that when the opportunity to direct came my way, I was working with
You were ready.
I was ready, and I was working with the very best people. I was working with William Ivey Long
Yeah.
and John Lee Beatty, and I was showcasing. with
Does the original cast of Grease
We're still in touch.
get together? I
That,
feel like they
I
must.
think that any of those companies, I
That's such
bet
a special
the original
show
cast.
for so many people.
What?
But it's true that original cast in general will
Original
there's
cast.
something special about
yeah,
that.
and there's something about I bet the entire original cast of Natasha and Pierre will never lose track of
That's
each other
Yeah.
because
probably true.
half of they all got their
They started
equity
together.
cards together.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're in a show where everybody's a peer, there are no senior actors, there's no stars.
Right.
You're a gang, and we're still in touch with each other. I mean, I was at Tom Moore, the director's lake house, with Jim Canning last summer, and his wife, and Adrienne Barbeau came over.
all
I mean,
the greasers are together.
Yeah, and we had dinner with Barry Bostwick when I was out in L.A. You can't lose. There's something you bond in a way.
Yeah.
I bet all the Godspell people know. Godspell
Oh,
people
yeah.
know where they are.
Yeah.
And in the Heights, I'm sure all those chorus line. It's a bonding thing.
Especially when they're young people together. Like Spring
Young people
Awakening,
together.
maybe.
We're all the same age. None of us are stars, and we're in this giant hit.
No one's calling you and asking you to direct them in something now?
What?
Are they calling you and asking you to direct them in something?
No,
Give
but
them a
I've-
job.
But I've called them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question, Caitlin.
All right, last question. You have such great stories. Any plans to write them down in a biography or autobiography?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I don't think so.
We'll
But if
never
I
say never.
do, it'll be called
Oh.
I Wish I Had Moisturized.
This is wonderful advice for all of our viewers.
For all of you out there, moisturize. I don't know. I make little notes in my head. I enjoy passing things along, stories along. But I don't know if I'll write anything or if anybody would be interested.
Well, you've already thought of a title, so I think
Yeah,
it's
I'm
possible.
Set.
That was a joke, ladies and gentlemen. That was a joke.
Well, Walter, thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for inviting
go
me.
see St. Joan at the Samuel Freeman Theater.
Starring Condola Rashad, a
Starring
remarkable
the
young
wonderful
lady.
Condola Rashad, Tony nominee.
Tony nominee, fourth time Tony
know,
nominee.
That's insane.
She's
She's a
just-
child, and
I
she's
know.
got 4 of them. God.
Love her.
It's wonderful. And Caitlin, please take us out.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching Live at 5 today. As always, you can listen to this wonderful interview as well as all of our others on the Live at 5 podcast. Just go to Apple, search Live at 5, and you'll find us. Join us tomorrow as we are joined by another amazing guest.